All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to IAM, Independence Amplified Maryland. I'm Sarah Basehart, and I'm the Executive Director of Independence Now. And we are the Center for Independent Living, or CIL, as you'll hear us use frequently, that serves people living in Prince George's and Montgomery counties. I've always wished I had one of those jobs that was easy to explain. You know, you meet somebody new and they say, "What do you do?" And I always think to myself, what am I going to say? Because our jobs are not easy to explain because Centers for Independent Living are very dynamic. And so it's tricky. It's a trick question. So I like to use what our national organization does sometimes, which is it's a program, it's a movement, it's a culture. You can get direct services from us like peer mentoring and independent living skills training, but we're also a movement of people with disabilities who will advocate for civil rights even to our strongest opponents. And most importantly, it's a culture, a belief that we have a common history, a shared struggle, and that we are a community and a culture that will advance further when banded together. So hopefully that helps explain, because we do want to use this session as an opportunity not only to hear interesting speakers and learn new things, but for people to understand better what Centers for Independent Living do. So welcome again. This series is being hosted by different CILs in Maryland, and we've come together to live stream, as we know is the new word, right? To live stream and inform the disability community. We're featuring speakers on current issues that are of most interest to the disability community and its supporters. We're just a couple of quick housekeeping things, and then I'll turn things over to Mike, who's interviewing our speaker today. We have a chat box at the bottom. Some of you might be newer to using the, you have to sort of touch your mouse or the screen, however you're using your technology, in order to get a black bar to come up at the bottom that then says a few things like mute, you know, which you're already muted, so you're good there. But if you need to do anything that you don't want us to know about, you want to hit stop video so that we are not going to view anything you don't want us to see doing. There's participants there so you can see everybody. But the chat feature is really important. You want to be able to put questions in there, because if the speaker can't take it right at the minute, then Heather from the Image Center is sort of gonna help to monitor the chat box and make sure your questions get answered. You won't be using the share screen or record, so you don't have to worry about that. If the view bothers you, up in the top right-hand corner, you can hit speaker view. It's probably what it says right now. And then it will only show you the face of the person who's speaking. So in case it's hard, we have a lot of people on, 38 people on so far. Sometimes it can be tricky to find who is that speaking right now. So if you hit speaker view, it'll bring that person to the main part of your screen so you see them the most, if that's important to you. So you can also raise your hand, and you do that by hitting participants. And then you find your name, which usually is at the very top, and you hit raise hand. So I think that's all the logistics. Heather, did I miss anything?
Just that we're recording so that we can put this up next on our YouTube channel.
That's important to know. So don't say anything, because my mother's on the call. Don't say anything you don't want your mother to know on this call. All right, thanks. I'm going to introduce Mike Bullis, the Executive Director of the Image Center, and he can take things from here.
All right, thank you, everybody, and welcome. It's good to have you all here this week. This is a great opportunity. Technology is hugely important in the lives of many folks with disabilities, and we have with us a person who knows as much or more about technology than virtually anyone in the state. Has been dedicated to this field for 20 years or so, really knows everything there is to know. When I was the executive director of the Maryland Technology Assistance Program, I knew that if we really had a challenging question or needed to get something done, it was Lori Markland that we turned to because of her skills and aptitudes, and frankly, just because she's so dedicated to what she does. So I want to turn this program over to Lori Markland, and let her take it away. She is the executive director of the Maryland Technology Assistance Program. Lori?
All right, thank you guys. Thank you all for taking some time out of your afternoon to be here. I am going to pull up a PowerPoint, and I sure know a lot about technology, but I'm not quite sure how to share my screen, right? So I'm gonna hit share screen, and hopefully everybody's gonna be able to see my PowerPoint. Give me 1 second. All right, there we go. So hopefully everyone can see the PowerPoint in front of them. And I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit about the Maryland Assistive Technology Program and what we do. So we are part of the Department of Disabilities. So we are considered a state program. And I want to give you just kind of a little bit of information about me so that everybody kind of knows where I'm coming from. I live here in Baltimore City, and I've been here pretty much my entire adult life. I have 3 kids and a bonus kiddo, that's what I call her. And then we have a dog as well. So we have a big household, lots of people in this home. I've worked with the AT program for 20 years. I started right out of undergrad. I have a bachelor's degree in English, and I started working for the AT program having no real knowledge of assistive technology. I came in to help rewrite the website and get some materials up and running, and I haven't left. I love the AT program. I love what we do. I've done a number of things with the AT program over the years that I've been with it. We've done work in IT accessibility. We've done work in making sure that education institutions are aware of how to integrate accessible information technology into their platforms, financing for assistive technology. So you name it, I've been kind of involved with all elements and aspects of the AT program. So I've been there for 20 years, done a lot of crazy things with the program, and recently I've become the executive director. I have a daughter with nonverbal learning disability, ADHD, and severe anxiety. And so because of that, I've learned a lot about integrating AT into my own life. So for years, I've talked to folks about how assistive technology can be beneficial for all kinds of things. And only in the past few years have I realized how much we sort of come to depend on it as well. As a parent, I've been part of the IEP process for a number of years, trying to figure out how assistive technology can support my daughter in school, at home, through distance learning, which has been another experience. And we participate in weekly services through Kennedy Krieger. So there's a lot of elements of my work that come into my personal life, and then a lot of my personal life that I can bring to the work that I do, so that it really helps shape sort of the areas that I think are really important for our program to grow and expand. This is just a couple pictures of my family. The one picture on the left, we're covered in colorful dye and powder from taking part in what was called Holy Fest, which is a festival that's held yearly. It's sort of an Indian celebration. So that we're just sort of having fun there. And on the right is a picture that we just took at the zoo a few months ago, right before we went into the sort of the COVID situation. And I always say this, like, this picture just sums up my whole family. Like, every expression on their faces is who they are. So I have, you know, like sort of the mindful child, the annoyed child, the happy child, and then like the goofy kid. So that's my family. These are all the people that sort of influence me every day. So now we've kind of gotten that out of the way, you know who I am. Talk a little bit about what the Maryland Assistive Technology Program is. And so we are the statewide assistive technology program, and we run a number of services. We provide equipment demonstrations, device loans, we run a reuse program, we have an alternative financing program, and we provide training. And of course, you can always go to our website, which is mdtap.org. And learn a little bit more, but I'm going to talk more about all of these features over the next couple of minutes. But if you go to our website, it will take you right into the Maryland Department of Disabilities website, and you'll see that we're a part of the Department of Disabilities. So what is assistive technology? It is any item, device, or piece of equipment that's used to maintain or improve the functionality of people with disabilities. It allows for greater independence in the, for independent living, in employment, in education. It's really any type of device that bolsters independence. So AT can range from what we call low tech to high tech. It can be screen readers. It can be adapted silverware for, independent feeding. It really ranges. It just covers a huge range. And one of the really cool things about my job is that I get to work every day when we're not telecommuting in an AT library. So it's a giant room filled with all kinds of devices that we make available to folks who need them. And of course, we always throw this quote into our presentation. It's from the IBM training manual in 1991, and it's technology makes things possible. And we know that because technology is the basis of essentially everything we do now. It's how we get our news. It's how we stay engaged. It's how we learn. It's how we work. Technology is with us in all facets of our life. And it's what makes things possible. And for folks with disabilities, oftentimes it is the key to making sure that that person has sort of equal access to what many others have already. So there's an assistive technology services flowchart, and every state in the US and territory has an assistive technology program. And every AT program conducts key activities. So these are the main things that every state AT program is going to do. So if you leave Maryland and you go to Virginia, or you go to California, or you go to Hawaii, Puerto Rico, wherever you go, you are going to find a statewide assistive technology program. And these are the core services that these programs are going to provide you. Information and assistance. So you can call us at any time, ask questions about assistive technology, ask questions about general services, about home modifications, about funding. Whatever it is, we have trained staff that are going to be able to answer those questions and direct you to what you need. Every AT program has device demonstrations. So every AT program has libraries, physical libraries, where you can go and you can access different types of assistive technology. You can borrow those items. The general term of loans is about 4 weeks. So I often describe our services like being a public library, but instead of having books, we have equipment. So every state program has one of these. Every state program will focus on equipment reuse to some capacity. So what that means is there is some system in place where folks can contact us and say, I have a device I no longer need. How do I get rid of it? Or I need something and I can't afford it. How do I get it? So that is what we call AT reuse. And I'm going to talk more about what Maryland does with AT reuse. And then also state financing. And usually that encompasses running a low interest financial loan program, which we do here in Maryland. So we can provide low interest financial loans for assistive technology, for vehicles, adapted vehicles, home modifications, anything that falls under technology. So specifically, what do we do here in Maryland? Well, right now, we run 3 AT libraries across the state. We have one in central Baltimore, so that's in Baltimore City. We have one in southern Maryland and one on the Eastern Shore, housed within the Centers for Independent Living in those areas. And these AT libraries are open to the public, so folks can call, they make an appointment, they come in, they meet with an AT expert, and that person will sit down with them and show different devices based on whatever those needs are. We provide some guidance on what may or may not work. We provide short-term loans of that equipment, so you get to leave that library with the device. You get to take it home, try it out. If it works for you, wonderful. We're going to give you information on how to go about buying it. If it doesn't work for you, we want to know that, because then we're going to work with you to find something else that might fit better. So that's sort of our goal, is to help consumers figure out what assistive technology is going to meet their needs, And then we're going to help find a plan or devise a plan for that person to be able to get the equipment that they need. And that might be referrals to Voc Rehab, referrals to the SILs. It might be a referral to our financial loan program. It might be us finding something in our reuse work that we do and getting it for free for the consumer. So whatever it is, we're going to try and help somebody get that device that they need. We host webinars and trainings and lots of presentations on assistive technology and different facets of assistive technology. So we may do presentations on setting up a smart home, or we might do a presentation on how to integrate AT in the workplace. We have a wide variety of presentations that we do. We run a Facebook page called Matter. It's M-A-T-E-R. And that page allows for individuals to go on and list items that they are selling or giving away, or even items that they need. And we try to make connections directly with constituents. So it's like a Facebook yard sale or marketplace page, but we just kind of facilitate it. So that is a way that we help encourage AT exchanges. And that's not just assistive technology, but also something what's called durable medical equipment. So things like hospital beds, wheelchairs, lift chairs, anything like that can go on this page. And so we facilitate and make those connections. We also encourage people to just reach out to us if they have something that they want to give away. We can typically make a connection with a consumer that needs it. And just recently, one of the things that we launched that we're really excited about, that we've not had a lot of opportunity to expand in the past few months, but in January, we opened up our high-tech AT reuse center. So it is a physical space housed within the loan closet of Howard County, so it's out in Columbia. And it is an actual space where folks can make appointments, come in, see some of the high-tech AT that we have available. So we have video magnifiers, eye gaze systems, communication devices, that these are items that have been donated to us that we have refurbished, repaired, and then we make them available for a long-term loan. So if someone needs it, we're going to give it to them. They can use it for as long as they need it. We only ask that when they're finished with it, they return it to us so we can make it available again. So it is our high-tech AT reuse center. One of our AT clinicians manages this program, and so she does the actual consultation with the consumer. She really makes sure that there is an appropriate device made available to that person, depending on what those needs are. We also run a low-interest financial loan program. So I know I mentioned that earlier. These are financial loans that run between $500 and $50,000. So we can help finance things like iPads, Chromebooks, hearing aids, adapted vehicles, which are very costly, home modifications, which can be costly. It just runs the gamut. We provide low interest financial loans. We typically, in an average year, we issue anywhere from 60 to 80 loans, and usually between $1.5 to $2 million worth of financial loans yearly. So it is a very robust program. And certainly if someone needs assistive technology, we encourage them to work with us, and if they can benefit from a loan, a financial loan, we will refer them right into the financial loan program. We also have an agreement with a program called MAT, which is the Maryland Accessible Telecommunications. So we run 3 spaces across the state, one in Baltimore City where our library is, one in Western Maryland, and one in Southern Maryland where our library is. And these are telephone evaluation centers. So there are a wide variety of adapted telephones, TTYs, cell phones. And so we run this evaluation center, and someone can go in with an appointment. They can have an evaluation conducted to determine what type of adapted telephone is going to meet their needs. And then we can work with the Maryland Accessible Telecommunications Program so that that person will eventually get a telephone provided to them for free. There is an application process, and so that's something, you know, we can always explore more individually if someone has questions about that, but it is a program that we have recently been involved with, and we're excited that it's such a nice fit with our general AT libraries. Because adapted telephones was something that we didn't typically have in our libraries before, but now we've been able to integrate adapted telephones as well. And so if you go to our website, there's a number of things on here. We've recently been trying to update our content. So you may even see more if you go to our website right now, but we do have a virtual AT library, which means you can go in to the link for the virtual AT library, and you can see a variety of our devices that we have available. You can search by sort of categories, so you can look for blind, low vision, deaf, hard of hearing, communication devices, computers. You can search by category, and you can see a wide variety of our devices. You're not going to find everything that we have in our library simply because we have a lot of equipment, but it's a pretty good reflection of what's available. So it gives you an idea of what's in there, and then you can kind of say, oh, well, I have an interest in X, Y, and Z, and I'd like to come in and see those, and then we can work with you. We also have a home modifications directory online. So that is a huge listing of funding resources, companies that can come out and do assessments of your home, contractors that can give quotes to make modifications to homes. It's a really large directory, but it can be pretty helpful in sort of figuring out exactly what you need if you're looking to make modifications to your home. And then again, we would also work to make sure that you have information on all of the appropriate funding resources outside of what's in the directory. And then we also have our loan closet directory. And loan closets are typically small little facets of organizations all over the state, and loan closets tend to be places where they take equipment that folks no longer need, walkers, toileting aids, shower aids, wheelchairs, hospital beds, and they take them in. Sometimes they refurbish them, they clean them up a little bit, and then they make them available. And it's sort of a more localized activity. And then here within our program, with the AT program, we also run, like I said, that Facebook page, as well as our high-tech reuse center. But the loan closets are all over the state, and we often direct folks to those because they are a wonderful community resource. So just a little bit of sort of the big picture of our program. We say it's a small federal investment for really large benefits in return. On average, it's about $28 million that's issued overall for every state AT program in the country and territories. So $28 million is the federal investment, and then each state gets a little piece of that to run these AT programs. We provide access to recycled AT, discounted purchasing programs. I'm going to talk about Maryland's in a few minutes. And so there's a huge amount of savings made available to individuals based on this investment by the federal government. And the AT programs have been in existence for 30 years. So this amount has grown over the years, obviously, but it's always been a small piece of the federal budget, but it has a huge impact on communities. There are nearly 500,000 direct service recipients. So what that means is that nearly 500,000 people across the country are receiving services through the AT programs. Last year in Maryland, we served over 2,350 constituents directly, with between device demonstrations, device loans, the trainings that we did, and the reuse that we conducted. So that's a pretty big number of folks for a very tiny program. There are 4 full-time folk in our staff right now and a couple of part-time individuals. So it's a small group of individuals really making a big difference. So that's just sort of the big picture of how these AT programs run. And then just to give some information on what you'll find in our libraries when you come to us. So if you're coming to us and you're just like, what exactly do you guys have? Well, here's some examples of what we have. So in this slide, there's a bunch of pictures. Top left-hand corner, there is an electronic handheld magnifier. So that device can run anywhere from like $800 to $1,200 for that. And what it does is it allows someone to magnify whatever's in front of them. You can change contrast, you can change the strength of the magnification, you can take a snapshot with that device. It's bigger than a cell phone, but smaller than a standard iPad. But it allows a lot of flexibility. It allows you to do some things with that screen that you may not be able to do with an app on your phone, or even an app on the iPad. In the middle there is a communication device. So for someone who is nonverbal, something like this type of communication device is going to be really beneficial in being able to express needs, desires, and it's absolutely fundamental for a lot of folks. On the top row right-hand side, we have adapted silverware. So these are different types of what's called liftware or levelware, and they were made specifically to help folks with different types of disabilities, such as like Parkinson's or MS, who have tremors, or CP, where there's some like physical contortion at times with feeding. So these different devices are really beneficial, and we do loan these out. Certainly we practice extreme sanitation, but these are things that we do loan out for folks. In the bottom left corner, we have different types of reachers. So I'm sure everybody can envision that claw reacher that you kind of, can imagine that physical therapists or OTs will provide to someone to reach things on high shelves. Well, these are different types of reachers. These have magnets, these have sticky pads. So there's all kinds of tools that are available to make life just a little bit easier. Right next to those reachers, we have what's called a pocket talker. That's an amplification system. It's a little narrower than a cell phone, so you can kind of hold it in your hand. You can connect your earbuds to it, or you can turn on the T-coil in your hearing aid, and it by Bluetooth talks to this. And what it does is it amplifies what's in the room. So something like this can be really helpful sitting in like a college lecture room, or sitting in a conference, a conference space where you're listening to a speaker. It's going to amplify everything. Next to that is an eye gaze system. So it's a picture of a laptop with a camera on top, and that camera will read your eye movements and allow the person to actually type, because it's hard to see here, but that is an on-screen keyboard there. They can type, just navigate the computer in general. And then next to that are different types of adapted keyboards. Keyboards that have high contrast, so yellow on black or white on white, depending on what you need, and then white on black. Some of these keyboards have very large print, some have more regular print on the keyboards. There's all kinds of things that are available, and this is just a little snippet of what's in our libraries. We have another, on this next screen, you'll see we have another type of eye gaze system in the top left-hand corner. So that's another type of computer screen setup that has a camera, this time at the bottom, pointed upward. And that's another eye gaze system that will allow someone to navigate that screen. You can also use eye gaze systems with communication devices. So you can use your eyes to navigate and speak out your needs, your desires, all of that. Next to that, we have an Alexa Dot and a more traditional Alexa Tower. Those are great for smart home setups. So if you visit our library in Baltimore, one of the first things we do when we walk into the room is we tell Alexa to turn on the lights, to turn on the fan. So we can demonstrate how you can integrate smart home technology into your life to make things just a little bit easier. And it's not expensive, and it's not a huge learning curve, but it can be a little bit scary if you're not sure how to do it. So we do have a number of smart home devices. We don't typically lend them out as often, but we do have them for loan, but a lot of times we're using them for demonstration. Next to that is a voice amplifier. So that's a little, almost looks like a little fanny pack that you wear around your hips, and it actually amplifies your voice when you speak. So for someone who may have a very low voice, who might whisper a lot, this type of device is just going to make it easier in the general, communications that you're doing, whether it's with friends and school, whatever. It's just a general amplification system. In the bottom left-hand corner is an adapted Xbox controller. So one of the really cool things we did last year was we hosted an adapted gaming night. So we had students that are students with Voc Rehab. Some had needs for adapted gaming, some didn't, but we had this huge event. I think we had somewhere along the lines of 40 to 50 kids show up, and we had all kinds of gaming stations set up. Some were set up with eye gaze technology for kids who had more involved disabilities. We had some adapted controllers for folks who needed to maybe use switch technology to game. We had some regular gaming systems set up for folks that didn't need any accommodations. And it was a really cool event. And it was really nice to be able to get together a wide variety of gamers who had different means or different ways of gaming, and being able to provide all of those different methods to access games, and seeing all the kids just kind of integrate and have fun. So we do have in our Central Baltimore library a whole adapted gaming setup. Again, we don't typically loan out the whole setup, but we do loan out the controllers, some of the switches that can go with these controllers, and that's one of the areas we've been expanding. And then to the right of that, we have a little device that connects to a smart stove. So this is an Alexa smart stove, and that allows for someone to actually manage their stove with their smart home device. So there's a lot of options out there for sort of increasing and navigating independence in the home. And so one of the things we like to do is make sure people are aware of that. In our AT library in Baltimore, we do have a smart stove set up as well, so we can demonstrate that. And what we'd like to do is expand that area so that we can really have a full smart home set up for folks to come in and experience.
Hey, Laura, sorry
Yes.
to interrupt. We had a couple of questions in the chat about where people can actually buy adaptive gaming equipment and games.
Yeah, so for the adapted gaming equipment, Microsoft, like the Microsoft website, sells those adapted controllers. Depending on what other type of controllers you need, Amazon sells some. We just bought a bunch of different adapted controllers from Amazon. Now, the Xbox one is specifically Xbox, so you have to get that through Microsoft. But depending on what gaming system you're using, there can be different controllers or, different methods for accessing it. So we can certainly give more information about that. I'd say if you have, if you want to email me, specifically what you're using, then I can give more information on where to go to buy the different, if it's a controller that you need. Some games do require, or not games, but some systems, depending on what the needs are, you can use an eye gaze system. Some eye gaze systems work better with certain game systems than others. So we can certainly give some guidance on that as well. Other questions before I go on?
Yep, actually, someone was asking about the smart stove system, and is it accessible for people who are blind?
Yes, yes. So setting up a smart home system, that smart home stove, that smart stove is going to work with your Alexa, which you can set up regardless of, if you're blind or not. So that can be done. If there are specific setup questions, or if you want to know a little bit more about the stove that we have, that we demo, just I'd say just email it over to me, because I'd want to loop in our AT clinician that got that all set up, because she could answer that better than I could.
And then another person was asking for a little bit more information about the device that helps people hear better.
Oh, the Pocket Talker. Yeah, so Pocket Talker is one of the companies that makes what are called assistive listening devices. And assistive listening devices just magnify or amplify the sound that's around you. So it's not going to replace a hearing aid, but what it will do is it will amplify the sound. Now, there are also apps that can do that on a smartphone. So if you're using an Android or an Apple, there's some free apps that will do that. So you can have it connect with, the Bluetooth and the T-coil in your hearing aid, or you can just plug in your earbuds and it will do the same thing. It really just kind of depends on a person's preference. But there are these assistive listening devices. They're, sort of standalone devices. You can take it with you. You can set it in the middle of the table if you're having dinner with friends. And it will just amplify all of the conversation around you. So you're just hearing everything a little bit louder.
And one more question. So two more questions. One person was asking about Xbox games for low skills, low functioning disabled person. And someone else asked about assistive writing tools due to MS tremors.
Okay. Assistive writing tools, we have a lot of those. Some are super low tech. So depending on the person's abilities, you could take like a tennis ball, put a hole through it and use that if the issue is like grip and tremors. We do have one called the Writing Bird, which actually sits on the desk. It kind of looks like a paperweight, but it's created to sort of fit the hand. And so you just hold, your pen sits inside of it and you just kind of hold on to it. That's really beneficial with tremors. But we do have a variety of those that we could certainly show you. We may have some like shown on our virtual library, but if not, just call us and we can certainly walk you through what's available in our library. And I'm sorry, the other question about the gaming system. So like, just remind me, it was for like low skill.
Yes, it's a where can we find Xbox games for low skills, low functioning disabled person?
That I'd have to do a little research for you. I think it just kind of depends on what type of games they're looking for and what the skill level is. So there would be different, Xbox, you can download a variety of games through the Xbox website. Typically with Xbox, you have a subscription. So you pay monthly, but it gives you access to all kinds of games. So you can put in like age level, skill level, you can search by all of those, but we can talk a little bit more about what maybe those are and then what the person's physical capabilities are. Do they need something adapted? Don't they need something adapted? And then we can help, provide guidance on that. So I'd say for some of these questions, just email me and you'll see my email address at the end of the presentation. But you can email me and then I'll work with you and our assistive technology clinicians to sort of figure out what's the best solution. I do want to say really quickly, because we are sort of in this age of COVID right now, we're not able to do a lot of AT consultations one-on-one because we are still in this mandated phase where we have to telework. But we can do virtual consultations and we have been doing some of those. So we can do a virtual consultation and then we can ship you out the equipment that you can then try on your own, and we can provide some additional tech support once you have the device. But we can do that to help until we can get back into the office and do more one-on-one work with consumers.
Somebody wants to know if they want to borrow equipment from you, if they want to borrow money from you to buy a piece of equipment, do they have to borrow the equipment from you first and try it out, or can they just come in for a loan?
They can just come in for a loan. It's really, if the consumer knows what they need, what they want, you don't need to go through us to borrow it. You've already done that. You've already figured that out. So if you know what you need, we have a form on our website. It takes about 35 seconds to complete. It's really just your name, what you're looking to purchase, about how much you think you need to borrow. and you submit that. It comes directly to the director of the financial loan program and myself. And then she's in touch with you to go through the application process.
What kind of credit rating do I have to have in order to borrow this money?
That's a good question. So every financial loan that we issue it's considered a high risk loan. So what we do is when you apply through our program to borrow money, we send that application right to one of the lenders that we work with. If the lender says, hey, this person has great credit, we can approve them. They don't need to go through you, and we're going to give them that special interest rate that we have agreed with the lender, then perfect. That person gets the loan, and they really have just gone through us to get that lower interest rate. If the lender comes back and says this person is, they don't have enough credit, they have poor credit, whatever it might be, then that application comes to us, and we then work with the consumer, sort of talk about what maybe the issues are on the credit report. We look closely at debt to income ratio, and then we make the case to our board of directors. And our board of directors reviews applications every week. So once a week, they get all of the information with all the applications for that week. And they make the determination as to whether or not to approve it. So every loan that we issue is considered high risk because it's coming with the backing of our program, and the lender has already said that they themselves won't approve it. But if we approve it, then the lender will go ahead and issue the loan.
Lori?
Yes.
Sarah, I just wanted to add that question about the loan that Mike was referring to is specifically for a tablet or laptop. And I just want to encourage anyone who's looking into tablets and laptops to check with their local Center for Independent Living first before you start to get a loan with MDTAP, because sometimes we know local entities that provide them at very low cost, depending on disability, depending on income, and so on. But I just encourage you to check that out first, because it may be possible to get one for very little money. And so I encourage you to check with your local Center for Independent Living first.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because a lot of times what we're going to do when we talk with the consumer, when they come to us and say what they want to borrow the funds for, we kind of go through that whole thing. Have you talked to your local CIL? If we know that there are resources out there that can help them pay for it, we're going to direct them to those resources first. Sometimes folks only need a portion of their funding through us, or ultimately they don't need it through us. So we're always going to kind of make sure that they've evaluated and looked at all the other options out there for funding, because taking out a loan, in some instances, it can be very, very costly. So we want to make sure that they've explored all the options available. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back in with a little bit more of my presentation, if that's okay, and then I can answer more questions. What I did want to note, in our libraries, we do have a large variety of iDevices. So we have iPods, iPhones, iPads, Android-based tablets, and each of these tablets or iDevices has a variety of apps that folks can use. So some of them are set up with a lot of different communication apps. Some are set up with like task sequencing apps and apps to provide skills training, things like that. Some of the iDevices have apps for low vision needs. So we have a wide variety of apps that we can make available. We do loan out our iDevices. So we want to make sure, especially for consumers who might be trying out different communication devices, that they really have an opportunity to try that specific app on the type of device that they're going to potentially fund or pay, purchase. So we do have a wide variety of these, and you can see some of that on our virtual library as well. But again, this is where work with our AT clinicians on our staff is going to be really helpful, because they're going to talk to you about what the capabilities are, what the needs are. We use what's called the SET framework. So we're going to evaluate the setting, the environment, the task, and we're going to make sure that we're providing you with the right type of equipment for what you're trying to accomplish. Our Matter Facebook page. Again, this is set up through Facebook yard sale. So if you're familiar with the yard sale system on Facebook, it's really quite simple. You just go to the page and you can see equipment that folks have listed, things they're selling, things they're giving away. And if you're interested, we'll help make that connection with the person. If you have stuff that you want to donate, we encourage you to put it here because it really does make it helps to make those connections. It will put you in touch directly with another consumer. So if that's not an area that you're comfortable with, then we'll talk to you about loan closets that you can donate the equipment to instead. But this is a great way to make sure that the stuff that you're either selling or giving away really gets into the hands of folks that need it. Again, our financial loan program, we've already talked a little bit about this. These are low interest loans for assistive technology. They range from $500 to $50,000. Our interest rates are quite low. They're usually 1 point below prime. Right now, that's between 3% and 4%. And we are approving loans that have in essence been turned down by a conventional lender. So anybody coming through us that gets approved through us is somebody who could not have gotten that loan on their own. So every loan we issue is what they consider high risk, but we have an extraordinarily low default rate. It's less than 1%. So, we really work diligently with each of the applicants through our program to make sure that they are borrowing money at an amount that is comfortable and meets their needs. We also work very closely with a company called AT Discount Sales and Services. And this is a company that essentially negotiates discounted interest rate or discounted rates on assistive technology. So school districts will go to this company to buy equipment. If we have a consumer that's buying something or interested in buying something, we're going to send them here to see if if AT Discount Sales can get a lower rate. The purchase is made through AT Discount Sales, but it's an incredibly impactful program because essentially the woman that runs this program is running a purchasing cooperative. So she's making sure that she's talking with every AT vendor out there to get a discounted rate for the folks that come to purchase equipment through her. So it's a very powerful program that she's running. The Maryland Accessible Telecommunications Program, I spoke a little bit about this earlier. This is the adapted telephone program that is now integrated into our AT library in Baltimore City and in Southern Maryland. So it's a really fantastic program. We run the device library. We have a telephone evaluator that does these evaluations, but to apply to get the phone purchased through the state, it is through a separate program, but we walk folks through the whole process. So it sounds convoluted, but it's really not as bad as it sounds. And it's a great program because not only do you get the evaluation for the phone, but you get the free phone provided and then tech support that goes along with it. So it's a really fantastic program to make sure that folks have access to communication. And certainly we have some of our general information out there. We have a blog. There's usually 2 to 3 posts a week with all kinds of topics. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube. So you can certainly get lots of information about us in all those different places. Our central office is in Baltimore City. So you can always reach out to us if you have questions, if you want to come to our AT library, you just make an appointment. And we'll work with you to make sure you have a chance to visit our library. On the Eastern Shore, our library is housed in the Bay Area Center for Independent Living. And then in Southern Maryland, it's housed in the Southern Maryland Center for Independent Living. So we have these 3 amazing libraries and trained staff in every area to make sure that any AT questions you have can be answered with those libraries. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and we can go back and whenever everybody's beautiful faces. There you go.
So Lori, this is something you kind of covered, but it's coming up in the chat again, and that is, are there income requirements or eligibility requirements that people should know about in either for borrowing equipment from you or for borrowing money from you? What do they need to know?
That's a good question. So there are no income or eligibility requirements for Maryland TAP. So for our program to borrow equipment, to visit our library, to meet with our AT clinicians, absolutely nothing that you need to worry about in terms of, income requirements, eligibility. You don't need to show any documentation, declaring or demonstrating a disability. You just call us and you make an appointment. In terms of the financial loan program, there is no financial or income limits, but what the financial loan program does is they look at all sources of income you might have, whether that's SSI, SSDI, employment, retirement, trust funds, anything that you might have as income, they're going to look at. And they're going to weigh that against the cost of the loan that you're looking to borrow along with your other monthly expenses. So really it comes down to your debt to income ratio and whether or not you can afford the loan. And so they'll make, the financial loan program will work with you to identify a payment structure that feels reasonable, a term that feels reasonable for repayment. But you don't necessarily need to show eligibility or for income or disability.
Somebody wants to know, how can I get help for my disabled son to learn which apps would be useful for him with his iPad?
I would say please email us, and I'll put my direct email in the chat box, but email us, because what we can do is talk about what the nature of the disability is, what he wants to do on his phone or iPad or whatever, what sort of the intent is, and then we can help make recommendations for apps.
Okay, folks, any other questions for Lori?
Yeah, there was one more there, Mike. There was sort of two questions stacked on top of each other. The same person asking about apps was also asking, how can I get help to set up my Tekla E and Relay Kids phone alternative? Sorry if I didn't pronounce that right.
The Tekla E, I'm not familiar with that.
Not either.
I could be saying it wrong. Maybe Heather wants to unmute. Lisa's the one asking that question.
Oh, I'm seeing it in the chat box.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine. I am not familiar with either of those, but what I'd say is I did put my email in here. Go ahead and email me all of that information, because what I want to do is then loop in our AT clinicians, because they would know, they'll know more than I would about that particularly. And then we can kind of figure out what sort of setup support they need, and then we can go from there.
Thank you. There's one more here, Mike, that was up a little bit further. Josh is asking, can an institution borrow an AT item to see if it's worth buying for the kids with disabilities they serve, or can only direct consumers borrow it?
Absolutely, any organization, institution, school systems. So we do a lot of work with providers in all capacities who come in and borrow equipment. So absolutely, we would encourage that.
Okay, folks, any other questions? I think while we're winding up here, I just want for really taking an extensive amount of time with us today. And thanks very much for just sharing a little bit about who you are. I asked you to do it and wasn't sure. I guess my feeling is that we really respect you as not just a faceless, nameless bureaucrat who hands out equipment, but as a person who has a real life and a real family. And I really appreciate you sort of engaging with us and letting us know who you are as a person. So thank you so much for that. And thanks for all your service. 20 years is a long time. You've stuck with it. You've really become an expert on these aspects, and keep up.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
There's one more question here. Someone's trying to find your Facebook and is not finding it. Should they just search for, I think I usually find it just searching Maryland Technology Assistance Program, all spelled out. And there, okay, Katie.
Yeah, so for our general Facebook, it's Maryland Technology Assistance Program. If they're looking for the reuse page, it's Maryland Assistive Technology, Maryland Equipment. Yes, I'm gonna write it in here real fast.
Katie got it, if they're looking for the reuse program. And then they still need your email if you're gonna put that in, Lori. Thank you.
Yeah, I put it up there. I'm gonna do it again real fast.
Thanks.
There you guys go.
In
Yes, and I
case
do have 2
anybody's-
email addresses. Either one, you know, I check them both every day, all day long. So send to either.
In case anybody has trouble reading in the chat box or accessing the chat box, it's lori.markland@maryland.gov. That's the easiest one.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much again. We really appreciate all this information. And I am going to turn it back over to Sarah Basehart again for any remarks she needs to make. And thanks again.
Just going to close things out, I guess, folks. Want to remind you that this session will be available on YouTube. Please give us a couple weeks. That takes time to comb through because we also make sure that closed captions are added to that session. So if you know somebody who, people can always request that as an accommodation. We'll talk about that in 1 second. But in case someone wanted to watch it again, we will have closed captions on the YouTube when it's posted. If you signed up to receive the IAM emails, then you're going to receive information about, ongoing each time, as these sessions are every Monday at 2 p.m. And you can click to register the Zoom link. It will be changing so that we're sure we're keeping things secure. So be sure to register each week if you're interested in the topic and want to attend, which we know you will. So just be sure you keep signing up. If you want to receive information about these sessions and you didn't, maybe somebody forwarded this to you and you would prefer to be on the direct IAM email list, then we're going to ask you to put your email, and you can send it privately to me so that it doesn't get announced to the world. If you're not interested in sharing your email with everyone who's on this call, you're welcome to send it privately to me in the chat box, and then we'll be sure they get copied out and you get added to that list. You will have an opportunity, because you are so lucky to be on this email list, to give a donation to these sessions. So obviously these are happening now on a shoestring because the SIL directors just want to make it work. But ultimately, we suspect that it will cost us money. And so we are looking for $5 or $10. It's our new, or more, I have to say, because I know Abe's on the call. Any amount you would like to give to support this program, we would be happy to accept it. And there's an opportunity to donate that when you sign up, or further down when you receive other emails from any of us. And a quick reminder that this program is for the disability community, and the best way that folks hear about it is probably from you. So if you are on this call, you enjoyed it, you want to make sure other people learn about it, all the Centers for Independent Living are sharing it on our Facebook pages. It's getting blasted out to our emails. But if there's somebody that we don't know yet, be sure to send it to them, and then they can get added to the list themselves. When you register for the Zoom, we are taking accessibility requests. So if somebody needs an interpreter or closed captioning while we're doing the session and wants to ask for that, please do so when you sign up. And next week, we're featuring a staff attorney from Disability Rights Maryland. If you're not familiar with Disability Rights Maryland, it's our protection and advocacy organization for people with disabilities. And they're going to talk about issues that they're working on related to COVID during this time, what they've been working on, how you can contact them if you have a legal issue that you need lawyers to work on, not just those of us who think we're lawyers, and how you can call them for an intake. So they're going to go through all of that next week, 2 o'clock on Monday. That's it for me.
All right, friends. Thank you, everybody. And see you next Monday at 2 o'clock.